Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, December 8th, and we are back with our all-star panel of local journalists talking about the biggest stories in Santa Barbara this week. Ryan P. Cruz of the Santa Barbara Independent, Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Independent, and Josh Molina, politics and policy reporter for Newshawk. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hey, Brian, let's start with you. The county Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 to approve the housing element, which I guess is good because it keeps the so-called builder's remedy out of the way for a while. But why was it a close vote? I mean, why was it a split vote?
I mean, it's been a long road to get here, and they're not exactly out from the threat of the builder's remedy yet. They still have to send it to the state and get that approval from HCD, so that could take another 90 days. But once they get that seal of approval, then they will no longer have to worry about these builders remedies projects coming in. And the 3-2 vote, it was kind of, I would say they were symbolic no votes. I think both Supervisor Nelson and Laura Capps knew that it would go through, but they wanted to voice their opinions and kind of take a stand that the plan, it checked all the boxes that needed to happen to show the state that we could accommodate this 5,446 units in the unincorporated areas of the county. But some of the decisions of where to place those units or where we potentially could, because they have to still be rezoned, a lot of them are in the Eastern Galita Valley, and there was a lot of pushback over that. And Laura, especially, she was very vocal about that decision kind of being made before she was on the board. And so she wanted to kind of make it clear that she supported affordable housing. And she's shown that time and time again when there's people in her district that are getting evicted. She went and showed up to speak with them. And so she's on the ground, supports affordable housing. She didn't support this plan and how the county plans to go about it.
Right. And as a practical matter, she's right. I mean, what is it, like 75% of the proposed housing?
Yeah, it could be thousands of units. And there was a lot of questions over why didn't some of those properties in Montecito, or especially Carpinteria agricultural properties, why weren't they included? And county staff, they did, I want to say they really did scour as many places as they could. I don't want to think they had any maybe some of the supervisors had some sway over which ones got included, but it was decided the cannabis agriculture, that was
cannabis is exempt according to claimant, because why exactly? All the other agricultural land in the Eastern Goleta Valley, that's going to get over for,
and that's so it's there's a question, because the Eastern Goleta Valley, they stated that they included those because they were so close to the urban infrastructure, so close to water, so close to electricity. Everything is already right there. But also Carpinteria would be, it's right outside Carpinteria. You would say that's similar.
And Das is running for re-election. I'm sure that
there's an election year, so there's a lot of that involved. But it did go through, and that's a good thing, because the due date for these reminder was February of earlier. These are all, and I think the county, the city, and Goleta are all just approving their housing elements, and that means a few projects have made it through the builder's remedy pipeline, and might get built due to that delay.
Yeah. So why did cannabis get exempted again?
So there was some questions over that. The county very early on gave a presentation, and they stated, cannabis or the agricultural around, they are looking for agricultural areas, but not around Carpinteria because of cannabis. And then later on, they went into detail, said that they reached out to the people that own the, some of these cannabis groweries, and they weren't interested in any future because, they're making good money there. Maybe they don't want.
They weren't making money. There's no tax. I don't know.
They're making less money than they were when they started. I'll say that.
They built greenhouses as opposed to Eastern Galita Valley, where it's just regular field agriculture. And if they're not making money in cannabis, they're going to go back to flowers. And from what I've heard, a number of them already have. They've ditched the cannabis and they're going back to flowers. But
But isn't
So-
like every single community master land use plan in the area call for that to be agriculture land continuing in the Eastern Goleta Valley? I mean, they're just running
Yes.
right over that, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they did want to use that as a last resort. Yeah.
But they
Well,
didn't even look at
let-
all the county. They didn't even look at all the county properties.
Well, let's be clear, okay? I mean, I think for whatever reason, we're beating around the bush. Doss Williams recruited Lisa Plowman to be the top county planner to oversee the housing element. That is a fact, and everyone knows that. And Doss pressured her, right, to keep carp out of it, right? And the reason that we don't have the carp growers who are saying, yeah, let's build housing is because the county went to property owners and said, would you be open to a rezoning of land? And if you are, we're going to put you on the list. So the whole system is wrong because you're getting consent from the property owners
Without any transparency, without any public.
yeah, and this is all done behind the scenes through emails, through private meetings, because they wanted to show the state, hey, look, we did real work here. We're not going to give you properties where they're eventually not going to be rezoned. So that is a fact. And the reason Laura decided to vote against it was because it's unfair.
Yeah.
The Glen Annie Golf Club, right? There's a proposal and they want to sell, right? They're talking to somebody about selling to a developer to build housing. It is inevitable. The only question is how many units it's going to be. It is not fair that most of it's in the Eastern Goleta Valley. And yes, there's all of these political rationalizations for why it can't be in Carp or Montecito or in the
Or
first
on
district
county land.
or on county property. And it's all sort of because it's all political. It's all because what the county planners drafted. And then, by the way, we had this exodus of county planners. Let's not forget about that. And then we have a system here where Laura's constituents, right, do not want more housing that is going to be unaffordable to most people who need it. Because this housing is going to have 10% inclusionary. The rest of it's going to be taken up by all the tech workers who can already afford to live here. And so that's the issue. And so when these elected officials come out and say, we need housing, and it's our right to have housing, you have to call BS on them because they're saying that as a talking point. We need middle income housing for people who make, the middle amount, $81,000 a year, $100,000 a year, to be able to rent.
There's no guarantee.
None of this housing is going to be that way. None of it.
Is that why Bob Nelson voted against it, Ryan?
Bob Nelson, he thought, there was a little too much policy in it. And, for the longest time, it had all gotten stuffed up.
It was too complicated or there was...
It was very complicated. There was a lot of additions that were in it, like programs and policies that, he thought weren't properly vetted all the way through that were getting thrown in with this whole pie. And to tag on to what Josh said, we're really behind on building affordable housing. Like we're doing great with building this above moderate market rate housing, projected to meet our goals over this next 8-year cycle, no problem at all. But in the low income and even moderate income, we don't even know where we're gonna build those. And that's why they had to do these rezones. And to Laura's point, they only added 9 county properties, which is I think 390 units out of these thousands that they need. And out of all the properties the county has, it's hard to believe that every single one of those properties was.
I don't even think they looked at them seriously. I mean, the bottom line, Josh is right. Lisa Plowman, in the thrall of Doss, took the path of least resistance. So,
well, I would also say Lisa Plowman is her own agent, and Lisa Plowman, before she came to work for the county, worked for J.D. Pikert and was like a pedal to the metal housing advocate, and was a big proponent of affordable by design and different types of housing. But she's pedal to the metal housing. That was what,
and putting the bulk of it on the South Coast was also her.
Well, that I think was also a reflection of one of Bob Nelson, what he said, that boy, every other housing element we've ever done has been like 88% of the units were in the city of Orchard, or they were in Santa
Is that
Maria.
Nelson's line? That was a good line.
It was
that was
100% for the past 15 years, which is the past 2 cycles. Yeah.
So, there's if you're a North County supervisor saying, hey, guess what? This is our reality for the last umpteen years. You deal with it this time. How's that shoe feel on your foot?
But they like growth in the North County, I thought. Not to overgeneralize. All right. Well, here's the only question I'm unclear on. So this will still require rezonings, correct? For
Yeah,
each.
they will have to rezone within 180 days of the state, finding our adoption in substantial compliance, meaning when the state approves our plan, we have 180 days to rezone and accommodate these units, these hearings are going to happen in January, February, I believe, and there's going to be some heated discussions.
Is that going to that's going to be like ground trench warfare? I mean, lot by lot.
Yeah, because some agriculture will have to be offered up in the name of housing, and we're going to have to figure out what those are going to be.
Here's my question. Maybe you know this, Ryan or Josh, because I don't. But has anybody looked at water availability? I mean,
Thank you.
I mean, there are certain things that you can squeeze and push and cram, but there are certain things that are finite. And is there enough water? How do you?
I'm not sure about the so county and city. I don't know specifically. I know Carpinteria housing element. Carpinteria Water District did state that they do have enough water to accommodate how many units they need. I think there have been some developments recently that, if you have a big building with lots of apartments, they can use water efficiently. So I don't think that's a huge issue as much as it, had been in the past. I think it's more, are we going to actually build the units that we accommodate? And is this going to actually happen over the next 8 years?
Well, I think, there's what water we get on paper, and then there's the water that we get in reality. And when you throw in climate change,
yeah,
I mean, the people who are in the water world are saying we have to figure out how to make do with less and have more of a violent upswings in terms of feast or famine. Planning for this much housing in terms of the water component is a much trickier ball game.
Especially when we get in a drought cycle next
year. And the state water that we get is so unreliable.
I haven't heard much of that discussion talking about the water at the meetings and in my interviews. They seem to brush over that and say, I mean, Lisa Plowman has told me there's plenty of water, but technically I haven't reported any stronger than that. And I wonder, should the county planner in charge of the housing element be such a housing advocate? I think Rebecca Bjork, she would have probably done this a lot differently if she were ahead of that, somebody who's a little separated from it. But the county is incestuous, right? And what I mean by that is politically incestuous, meaning there's all this stuff that goes on behind the scenes involving the electeds and the planners that none of us ever see. And most of us don't see. And everyone else just kind of gets the talking points. And the housing element, I mean, they're doing the rezoning in stages on purpose, right? It's like more palatable if you do it in steps. If they tried to do it right now, they never would have been able to get it done because this is going to take a long process. So I think we are going to get a lot of housing at the San Marcos Grower site that is on Hollister. That is transit. They want to sell. They've already got big plans and housing, and they're working with the housing authority. Much of that is going to be what Ryan said, which is what we need, which is low income. Okay. The Glen Annie thing, that is going to be a fight and a duel for sure, because there's no infrastructure there to support whatever amount of units they want to build there.
All right. We got to get out real quick on the other housing issue this week was the council's ordinance committee taking up more regulation about renovictions. I just wonder, Josh, did you hear from Councilman Jordan after you wrote the following? Committee member Mike Jordan took up a quarter of the meeting himself asking questions for 32 consecutive minutes. Is there time before members of the public could speak, and on and on. You only spent about 17 paragraphs on that, but no, what was the deal with
Well,
that?
I haven't heard from Mike Jordan in about 4 months, so I think he's,
Okay.
I'm cut off for God knows what.
Well, if anything's going to get his attention, that one.
Well, it was frustrating because it's a 2-hour ordinance committee meeting. They're talking about important tenant protections and tenants having the first right to return to a home after it's been renovated, because the issue is these landlords will say we need to renovate, and then they do maybe a lot or a little, and it's a way to get them out and charge a lot more. And then by that time goes by, where are these people at? They had to live somewhere else, and then they may not be able to afford an increase in whatever they increase. So this is to protect them. Jordan spent 32 minutes asking Dan Henschke, the city attorney, a bunch of questions, and it was frustrating because there's tenant activists in the room who want to talk, and I really think they should do the public comment, and then they should ask the questions, because they have the dais all year for 4 years.
Let me take it. I mean, I hear you, but this is a hot item. It's a really important one, and you got to get the DNA of the deal right. Otherwise, you're going to open yourself up to a lawsuit or a political blowback, and you have to figure out how to make this thing work. And it's a really necessary protection. And so, Michael Jordan, as we all know, likes to talk almost as much as Brian Barnwell. And he asked a lot of questions, and one half of the questions will be on one side of the issue, and the other half will be on the other, and you can't tell where he's coming from. But the reality is, they got to nail this one down and make it bulletproof. And everybody can get up there and do their rah-rah speech. Everybody knows these tenants need to be protected. How do you do it is the tricky part.
But
I don't doubt. Let me just follow up, Jerry. Sorry. I'm not saying Mike should not ask questions. Obviously, we want them to be smart and ask good questions. I'm just saying, in a 2-hour ordinance committee, let the public talk first, and then he can ask his questions after that. Rebecca Bjork had to go and say,
relevant then.
Rebecca Bjork had to go in there and say, we've taken too long. We need to stop the meeting and let's postpone it. So I was just sort of saying, the other thing too is he was asking questions that were answerable, and it's very frustrating when they don't read the actual proposed ordinance before they go into the meeting. So that's my whole thing. Yes, of course, ask a million questions, but I want to hear Stanley Sankoff, right? I want to hear Frank Rodriguez. I want to hear all of the, people who are talking about this issue as a reporter. So that's why I wrote it that way. But yes, the big issue, of course, is we definitely need more protections for individuals who are being renovicted.
The thing that
I want to add also that the second addition would be to protect tenants from harassment, which is a huge addition to that ordinance. And these tenants are, landlords can kind of say whatever they want to get tenants to leave, and they can sometimes lie in their eviction notices. And I've talked to tenants that have had landlords say, we didn't get your month's check last month, and they started videotaping themselves inputting their check and showing, this is your check, we're putting it into the mail right now. So their landlord can't say that, because landlords are, using these to get people to self-evict, which is kind of scary to get people, because when you have to think about whether, do I want to stay and fight this landlord, or do I want to, it's really hard to find another apartment. I got to find another apartment. So
the first notice that sent out at 215 Bass Street were very emphatic, very legalistic sounding. And if you were not a lawyer and you didn't think you had access to one, you would think, oh man, I got to get out of here. And in fact, those notices were faulty in the extreme, and they all had to be rescinded. But you needed somebody, unfortunately in this case, Mike Jordan, to take a crowbar and get the city attorney involved to say, you guys are violating the law, you need to rescind those notices. And they were very threatening.
Yeah. Well, at the risk of sounding like someone who believes we live under a capitalist system here in the People's Republic of Santa Barbara, the thing that jumped out at me, and I'm not sure if it was your story, Ryan, or Josh's, there's a an element? They want to say you have to have the same rent?
Yeah,
after
that's
renovation?
that's probably the biggest addition, and you would need to. They would have the right to return at 5 to 10%, which would be in line with what you're allowed to raise the rent yearly now. So it'd be 10% or 5% plus the consumer price index, and that change is what landlords are, bucking and fighting back about, because if you're a landlord and you need to renovate and that costs $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, you raise their rent, but at the same time, they're being used as a way to up every rent instead of just the ones that need renovation. So we do need to find a way to, find a middle ground, because landlords are saying we're not going to renovate if you add this ordinance, and which is kind of a strange way to, come at during your public comments saying, if you make this change, we're going to do A, B, and C. That's kind of threatening in my opinion, but that they are laying out their, it's a capitalist society and they have their right to make money, but
actual facts.
we do need to protect tenants here in Santa Barbara, because they are, we have 31,000 people commuting every day to Santa Barbara County. That's a huge number.
No, I mean, I think for that to work, you are going to have some sort of city-sponsored tribunal who will say, these are the expenses that are legitimate, and these are the ones that are BS. And the city does not want to have to get in that role because it's expensive, and you're going to have to tell some landlords yes and others no.
Well,
But
maybe
they're going to be costs that are legit, and others that aren't.
maybe we could put Fred Sweeney in charge of that. That he likes that kind of level of detail. All right. Speaking of the transparency of the county, Nick, boy, you had one for the ages this week on the county district attorney sues the county, I forget which department it was, on this Toro Canyon oil leak. And then the county supervisor has to show up for the hearing, and one county department has to pay the other $750,000, and the taxpayers are on the hook for all of it, as far as I can tell.
Pretty much. A little bit more. It is really a first. I mean, it is the first time the district attorney's office has sued another county department. This one is the Department of Water Division and of the Public Works Department for dragging its feet as much as it did in cleaning up the Toro Canyon Creek oil spill. And the county is on the hook because the EPA took over. Anyway, there's a oil seep coming down Toro Canyon Creek, and has been since the 1880s, when some private oil company drilled a well into the face of Toro Canyon. And it's been a problem. And the EPA took it over in the 90s. And then the EPA said, I don't want the hot potato. And they passed it on to the county. Initially, here's with a little funding. And then they said, oh, that funding, that disappeared. And all of that transpired roughly about the same time the Thomas Fire and the debris flow. So there are some extenuating distractions. But if you look at the records, between the time somebody saw a real seep on the ground that was like within 15 feet of the creek, and the time that the county actually took steps to clean it up, was about a year. And if it was an oil company, the prosecutors claimed that would be criminal negligence. And you're not making a profit, but still you need to clean up the creek because it's your responsibility. Yeah, it was dumped in your lap and you didn't want it, but it's your responsibility. So
and they wouldn't give documents to the DA, right?
Yeah, so the DA said, we want the documents, and they said, well, are you coming at us criminally or civilly? And the DA says, well, we don't know until we see the documents. And they said, well, if you're coming at us criminally, we're not going to give you the documents so you can come at us criminally. If you want a search warrant or subpoena, go do it. So what they did that was really interesting is they did what you and I or any reporter does, is they filed a Public Records Act request. And then there was like $1 million worth of litigation over whether the DA was entitled to do a Public Records Act request. And it looks like they were going to lose. And if it went to trial, it would have just been the most heinous embarrassment. And, you know, if you look at some of the emails back and forth, it gets down to some pretty bitter turf warfare, you know, and you have, you know, county public employees saying, let's not call it a spill, let's call it a leak, because that is less problematic. And, you know, there's a lot of anger that the county got stuck with.
Yeah,
it.
if only we had an elected representative for that area who might have exercised some leadership. Remind me what district is that one in?
That was district number 1 there.
Oh, okay. I have to check to see who does it.
He was not the one who was in the courtroom. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that was interesting too. They made Lavanino go in and take the hit for it because he's going out of office. So
Steve Lavanino was going to be the president of the board come December. So
thank God. Well, it is a first, I have to say. I don't remember anything like that. And then you say, what did the litigation cost? $1.70, 1.7 million, or 1.1 million, or
the litigation, just the cost of outside legal counsel to the county was $1 million. And then you throw in $760,000 in, you know, fines and fees. And about half of that's going to go to organizations, you know, designed to find oil, you know, to find uncontrolled oil seeps.
It will go to do-gooders. I mean,
the do-gooders are going to get about half that,
rather than cannabis enforcement, which we really need more of. Okay. Well, that was kind of weird. The other thing at the council that was interesting, Nick, was right up your alley. Stan Roden, a great community hero, who's head of the grand jury, came in, and there was a lot of concern. They had a really good report about these deaths in the county jails about people with mental health issues, and they had a very tough report on it. And then, the supervisors didn't really respond to it very well. But there was an interesting hearing about it. What's the outcome of that going to be all about?
Well, it's really interesting. I've watched the county board of supervisors respond to about 1 million grand jury reports. I have never seen any grand jury report receive so much love, respect, recognition. We are in alignment with you. This is a very significant report. You know, Mona Miyasato, the county administrator, said this is a great report. Tanya Hartman, the number 2 in command, said this is a great report. The supervisor said this is a great report. I do think the fact that Stan Roden was in the mix. Stan Roden, for people who don't know, was actually the district attorney in Santa Barbara from, I want to say, 1978 to 82. I'm sure I got those numbers wrong. And then he was a lawyer in private practice. And he was on the grand jury when they looked at deaths in the jail, primarily of people who were mentally ill. And what they came up with a report saying is, we have a dead guy, and he was dead within 20 minutes of being trucked into county jail. The protocols that were in place were observed, but the protocols in place were not the right protocols that should be there, and they need to be changed. You know, the death of this guy needs to be sent up to the Attorney General in Sacramento. The sheriff should not be reviewing jail deaths as the coroner to see what happens. Some independent other agencies should be doing it. And we need to have mental health professionals in the county jail from late at night to early in the morning, which the contract doesn't call for. And we need public health department to have a lot more say-so over what's going on in the county jail in terms
as well as training, and increased training as well.
And increased training in all of this. And the problem is with the county supervisors are extremely limited by law and what they can say in response to a grand jury report. They can say, we wholly agree, we wholly disagree. We partially agree, we partially disagree. That's like it. The 4 flavors of ice cream they can serve. So Laura Capps in particular said, you know what? this is such a great report. I cannot allow myself to be straitjacketed by the responses that the law allows. And so there was a much fuller conversation than I've ever seen about it. And B, Sheriff Bill Brown was on hand, and he didn't say I'm okay with a oversight committee, but he did say I am okay with a monitoring or a quality assurance committee. And so there is going to be a committee, a standing committee of some sort will come out of this. At least that's what they're saying. So look at what is going on in the county jail.
Well, Bill's
And-
always enthusiastic about
Well,
everybody
yeah, what was-
collaborating and on his turf.
But here was what was so striking about this event. Normally, the supervisors throw the mic down, we're coming after you, and Bill Brown becomes like the 8,000-pound gorilla and says, over my dead body. And he is super effective at that. This time, the supervisors didn't push quite as hard, and Bill Brown didn't push back quite as hard. And we will see what happens. But in the moment, there was a sense that something real could come out of it, which was really unusual.
All right. Well, it's the holiday season and Nick is getting all,
I'm getting all misty-eyed.
he's getting all misty-eyed about it. There's an old reference to the Adobe Gillis show. Oh my God. You don't even remember that. All right. A couple of quick things, Josh. Brian Barnwell, former city council member Brian Barnwell, appointed to the planning commission, kind of a little bit of a surprise, at the same age as Donald Trump. But that's a good thing. I mean, he does know this stuff. He was what, I forget, an appraiser, right? He's a property appraiser. So he knows from real estate.
He was a planning commissioner before,
And a planning commissioner and
and a city council member.
And you could argue that he was a better planning commissioner than a city council member because he's a real estate appraiser. He knows land use really well. He is an expert on it, and they really could use somebody like him for his expertise. The planning commission is, there's some new people on there, and you kind of need somebody with a little bit of sense of history. Of course, Sheila Lodge is brilliant and great, but somebody else who can
Is she
offer that
going on?
perspective.
She's still on, right?
She's still on. Yeah, no, she's still on. The chair, Rhonda Bonderson, decided not to seek re-election, probably after she blasted the city council for doing nothing for housing, which came out of nowhere and is totally not true. Brian Barnwell was appointed to the commission. He's going to really liven up those meetings because he's really
Also
smart.
make them longer.
He will, but he knows his stuff. And then Donald DeLuccio was reappointed to the seat as well. And Barnwell's just old school. He's just, he's really, really smart on these land use issues, and he's going to bring sort of some nuance to the issue.
Well, and I mean, we should point out also, Brian Barnwell was the first and one of the few members of the city council to come out in support of the newspaper workers at the news press at that time, and also famously got attacked by pit bulls at a homeless encampment. You remember
He
that?
got his behind bit by a pit bull.
And I foolishly let myself be talked out of leading the paper with that story with a timeless headline, "Dog bites man." But what are you gonna do? All right, Nick, real quick. I want you to rank these in order of biggest to less windbag. Brian Barnwell, Mike Jordan, Eric Friedman.
Boy, that's a hard one. I say Barnwell and Jordan are tied for first. Barnwell is much more colorful and more to a point, whereas Mike Jordan spends half the time arguing with the other half of the time he's talking.
Eric Friedman will give you a quote from Yogi Berra or some song.
Yeah,
or-
Aristotle. You can get anybody.
Grapes of Wrath.
He has more. Eric will have more footnotes than anybody else.
All right. Ryan, they finally approved the parklet ordinance. Was that your story, or
Josh covered that, but yeah, it was a long time coming. This was something they voted on a while back. Then they brought it back up again. They wanted to talk about it off the consent calendar and voted exactly the same. I don't know,
Yeah.
Josh, you want to explain a little bit more?
I
Yeah,
thought-
you can always tell the kind of week I'm having because I spent half of that story talking about how they wasted a month and ended up doing the same thing they decided in October. And so I was very annoyed this week. But
Readers
yeah,
always-
essentially.
I
readers
think you
always
need
love
to get some cannabis there, Josh. 'Cause you're just annoyed about everybody.
readers always love hearing about how hard it is to do your job, Josh. You know, that's one of the first things. Yeah, put more of that. But I thought the interesting thing in that one was Randy Rouse saying, "I don't care what you do, just so I don't have to vote on this."
I don't even care what we vote on. Let's just vote.
We've talked
Oh,
about
come on.
the
For
park
Randy,
list,
this
or-
has been waterboarding. I mean, he's like, just whatever you do, just get it done with.
All right, last point, Nick. You had a little thing about the annual drive for sleeping bags and blankets and coats and that. Where do people need to drop their stuff off?
Drop it off at the public defender's office over 1100 Anacapa, Ranapamu. I always get those mixed up. The public defender's office is leading the drive for sleeping bags, anything warm, blankets, socks, jackets, sweaters. Make it new or make it semi-new. Don't bring the stuff that you wouldn't wear yourself. There's a big distribution. I believe it's December 13th. It is getting cold out there. People are freezing. The warming shelters are going to be slammed. People need to have some warm stuff to wear.
All right. And Ryan, you had a little piece about the Sanctuary Center. What is that real quick?
That's been going on in the process for a while. It's over there on Anapamu. I also mixed that up. I think in the story someone pointed that out. Anapamu, not Anacapa. And it's kind of a unique thing that it's going to be 34 units of affordable housing, but it's specifically for people dealing with pretty severe mental illnesses in their families, and it'll have on-site mental health, on-site medical. And that's something that's really important for people that are, either just transitioning out of homelessness or really dealing with some pretty severe mental issues and that need more than just a place to stay. They need, a whole wraparound services. So that'll be interesting when it gets in there.
And the city, just add here, the city allows them to go up higher than normal to maximize the number of units there. And I think you need to give a shout out to Barry Shore, who is the head of that outfit. He is a wheeler dealer and a schemer and a dreamer, and he worked magic to get that thing done.
All right. And Josh, just looking ahead to next week, we talked last week about the walkout at DP by students on behalf of the teachers who are in negotiations with the district, and I guess this is spreading to where next week?
Well, there's going to be two. San Marcos High School is doing a walkout on Monday after first period, and then Santa Barbara High is going to do it on Tuesday. So San Marcos, they're going to walk from the campus to Tucker's Grove, and then the sort of, I guess, the big one, whatever, Santa Barbara High is going to march from their campus to the district headquarters on Tuesday after first period. So,
wow.
Yeah, all three are going to do it, and it's just a lot of pressure on the district and a lot of student activism. So it'll be a interesting first part of the week.
And meanwhile, DP Principal Bill Woodard has decided no accountability for those who missed class.
Quickly. A parent, an attorney cited the education code that said students are allowed to participate in political activity. And if they let the school know ahead of time. The district did not know about this, not Woodard, the district. And so they had to.
Including District Superintendent Hilda Maldonado?
Yes, I think you know who she is, and you mentioned Kate Ford should return to the board,
If I'm a student though, I want that absence. It's a little notch, a badge of honor, right?
Badge of honor.
Like getting arrested for the protest.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Thank you very much, Ryan P. Cruz, Nick Welsh, and Josh Molina. Thank you all for watching Newsmakers, and we will see you next time. Thanks.
All right. Let's see you.
Oh.